my first graders. Welcome back. I hope you had a fantastic break and got to do some fun things around your house with your family. I can't wait to hear about them when we Zoom today. So you probably have noticed I'm not in our classroom anymore. I'm in my house, but I brought all of our stuff home, so I have all the things we need to do our learning. So today, we're going to learn 8 brand new sight words. I think this week's a good combination of easy ones and super tricky ones. Okay? The first one is the word few. It says there are only a few trees here. So it means not many of something. Can you think of a way to use few in a sentence? We have a few people in our class. The second one is tricky. This is the word night. The sentence says, the buds open in the day and close at night. Can you think of a way to use night in a sentence? I go to sleep early at night, and that's true, I really do. But this one's sort of tricky because it has some silent letters in it, doesn't it? I don't hear that G at all, but there it is. Number 3 is the word loudly. The bird sang loudly in the tree. Loudly. Sometimes you guys yell loudly on Zoom, and then I mute you. Number 4 is the word window. That's a long one. I noticed that it has an O-W at the end. We learned a couple weeks ago that O-W says O. The big tree is very close to the window. We have a big window in our classroom. We have a few of them, actually. Number 5, I think, is super tricky. Number 5 is the word noise. I heard a noise in the garage. It's a sound. Can you think of a way to use noise in a sentence? Sometimes we hear a loud noise on Zoom. Now, I've often seen the word noise confused with the word nose. But this O-I vowel pair says oi. So this is not the word nose, it's the word noise. That's the hardest one this week. Number 6 is the word story. He tells a story about planting trees. Can you think of a way to use story in a sentence? I love to listen to a story. Number 7's a fancy one. Number 7 is the word shall. This is a word that tells about something that will happen in the future, sort of like will or going to. The sentence says, we shall pick apples today. It sounds very fancy schmancy. Can you think of a word shall, a way to use shall in a sentence? I shall see you on Zoom today. That's true too. Number 8, last one, is the word world. My garden is the best place in the world. The whole planet Earth. Can you think of a way to use world in a sentence? You guys are the best first graders in the world, and that's true. Next, we're going to take a look at all of our sight words and see if we can use more than one of them in a sentence. All right, here we have all of our sight words for this week. Can you think of a way to use more than one of them in a sentence? I shall read a story at night. I use 3 of them. Even though sometimes you yell loudly and make a lot of noise, you are the best first graders in the world. I use 3 of them again. Can you guess what the story might be about this week? I noticed a lot of pictures of the outside, and a lot of sentences are about being outside or in a garden. trees. Maybe our story will be about the outside today. Okay, so the story this week is about a garden. In fact, it's called The Garden, and it's from Frog and Toad Together. I wonder if you guys have read any Frog and Toad books. Now, it's going to start to get a little bit trickier because I was hoping that we would be back in school by now. But since we're not, you guys don't have the Next Journeys book. You know how we usually switch them out? So you guys don't have The Garden. So I'm going to try to give you a good view with the camera so that you can read it on screen. So feel free to hit pause if you need more time to read a page before I turn it. Okay? So I'm going to flip through it once and I'm not going to read. And I want you to try to read it through the screen. Okay? So this is called The Garden. And the essential question to think about is what grows in a garden? I bet you guys know what grows in a garden. You learned all about plants. If you need more time, hit pause, but I'm going to turn it. All right, I started the story over, and this time I'm going to read it out loud. So this is The Garden from Frog and Toad. Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. I noticed it already answered part of the essential question, that flowers can grow in a garden. I also noticed that Toad has an OA vowel pair. He planted the flower seeds. "Now, seeds," said Toad, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "These poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. Remember that when you see capital letters or bold print, that means you have to have more feeling behind it. When we were growing our seeds, we didn't yell at them. We just let them grow. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow." Now that sounds more like it. That night, Toad looked out of his window. "Drat," said Toad. "My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark." Toad went out to his garden with some candles. "I will read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they will not be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. Well, that's very nice of him, but I don't know if that's going to make them grow. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Do you know what type of illustration this is? It's spot illustration. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. "Toad, wake up!" said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "Finally, at last," shouted Toad. "My seeds have stopped being afraid to grow." "And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work." I don't know about you, but I think Toad made it a lot harder for himself than he had to. All he had to do was give them water and sunshine and wait. He didn't have to read or play music. Toad's silly. So for our story mapping today, we're going to map out the setting, characters, and the plot of the story that we just read, The Garden. So I sent this packet to your grown-ups, so maybe they printed out this page for you. If not, it's totally fine. It's very simple to make. You can get a piece of paper and write the setting, the characters, and the plot. Make a little chart on a piece of paper yourself. And story map our story we just read in the garden. So think about the setting. Remember, the setting is where the story takes place. Think about the characters. Who are the characters in the story? And then write about the plot. So write one thing that happened in the beginning, one thing that happened in the middle, and one thing that happened at the end. Great job reading today, first graders. I think that the setting of the story is in a garden. It's right there in the title. And the characters are Frog and Toad. One thing that happened in the beginning was that Frog had a garden and gave some seeds to Toad so he could start his own garden. In the middle, Toad was waiting and waiting for his plants to grow. And at the end, the plants finally started to grow. Wonder what your story map looks like. So you still need to be practicing your sight words. Now you don't have the cards that I gave you anymore because I was hoping we'd be back by now, but I sent all the sight words to your grown-ups so they could either print those out or you could write them on pieces of paper or on index cards or anything, sticky notes, anything that you have at home. But make sure that you have them in some sort of way that you can keep practicing them because we got to learn those sight words. See you next time for more. Bye.